Evening, welcome to the program. Just a few seconds, we'll have it underway. Our favorite person to be on with every week is on tonight, and Ali Peek Wilbur is in the orange and blue room. We're going to go right to her in just a second. Tonight, we're going to talk about a big get for the Florida Gators. I thought it was the name of a wine when I first saw Kendall Jackson, but this is the real deal. And we'll talk about him. We'll talk about tonight. I want to get into the Jimmy Valvano speech. I have a lot to say about it, and I'll explain later. But if you haven't seen the special on it, be sure and see it. And then Matt Quartararo, our bright young reporter who also was all over the recruiting scene, like Allie, is going to be joining us tonight too. So stay tuned. The Buddy Martin Show is about to be on the air. Tell your friends and neighbors to come join us.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Buddy Martin. The program is heard 4 times, maybe soon to be 5. We're on at night right now at 9. Maybe that might change. You never know. But stay tuned. We've got more for you tonight. It's always a good night when Ali Peek Wilbur is on the program. She's got another good story. She's killing it right now. And if you're not listening and watching anybody else, you need to subscribe to her podcast, I guess it is. Keep an eye on the Gators. And it's on YouTube. So check it out. We're getting lots of comments about it. Let's go right to that right now, even before I do a commercial, and talk to Allie. She's just put her twins to bed. She has to deal with Eric, her 5th child. And she, of course, is a 4-time legacy Gator. And she put all them boys to shame who thought they were Mr. Big Shot, going to get this story and get this first interview. Guess what? They didn't get it. She got it. And we talk about Fletcher Westfall. Let's go back to the familiar sight of her desk and her helmet and her grandfather and our good friend, Ali Peek Wilbur. Good evening to you, Ali.
Hey, buddy. How are ya?
Not as good as you, man. You're killing it. What's going on with you, girl?
Oh, thank you. This has been a very busy week. Florida, obviously the 2 commitments that I'm sure we'll talk about, and then the rankings updated for On 3. And so that caused some controversy in Gator Nation. And so, kind of been in the midst of that as well. So just another crazy week.
I've been watching some of your stuff and some of the comments about On 3 in particular and being heavily criticized for how they handle the stars. Yeah. Personally, I think the stars are overrated. That's just me, but I know it drives a lot of things and how important it is to have that 5th star, whatever the case may be. But, I mean, who died and made them the world's authority on the ability? I mean, they have a rating system. Great. You and I can have a rating system, Now, we don't have the trained eye that some do, but we got a pretty good knowledge of how to football, so we can do our own rankings, So why are they under so much fire right now, Allie?
Well, so On 3 updated their class rankings on Monday, and a lot of Florida's commitments dropped in places. And I social media has kind of been in an uproar. Gator fans have been losing their minds, and I think some of it's justified, and I think some of it is maybe a little bit of a lack of understanding of how these ranking systems work and what their purpose is. So when this started getting crazy, we reached out to Charles Power, who is the recruiting director for On 3, and I did an interview with him that actually ran yesterday. When this started to get crazy at like 1:30, we reached out to him, did the interview, and it was live by 4. to just kind of get him to give his perspective on it. And I think one of the things that most people don't realize is that the rankings are supposed to predict where they would get drafted in the NFL. So they're not actually supposed to be a predictor of college success. And not that the first round draft picks obviously did have college success, so there's some correlation there. But the reason that there's 32 5-stars is because there's 32 picks in the first round of the NFL draft.
Did not know that. I learned something else listening to you.
And it's that's interesting, and it makes sense. And I think that the other thing that people miss is that first they rank you within your position group. So if there are 10 quarterbacks, and let's say it ranks them 1 through 10, right? If you fall from quarterback 1 to quarterback 2, that's only falling 1 spot within your position group.
Okay.
But when they get to the overall rankings, the top 300, let's say, each position has a value. So quarterback 1 might be the number 1 overall top 100 kid, top 300 kid, whatever. But quarterback 2 could be reserved for like spot 24. So even though you fall only 1 spot within your position group, you could fall then 24 spots, let's first overall, because they're then factoring in every other position group. So I think when you look at it from that too, that makes it a little bit easier to understand as well, because in that top 300, they're ranking every position. So I think the important thing for Gator fans to know is that the only people's judgment that we need to be concerned about are our own staff and how they evaluate talent and where they put priorities and how they rank talent. Because what On3 does or what 24/7 does or anything else is really not relevant to what our coaches get.
I agree.
I think that's why it's important to not get so wrapped up in winning this recruiting national title that everybody seems to care so much about.
Yes.
That's not the most important thing. And obviously there's a correlation between signing a top class and winning a national championship, because the more top players you have, the more likely you are to win. But I really think when you get within that top 5-ish, they could all be interchangeable. And you may need positions on your specific team that carry less weight in that top 300. So your class may look, not quite as good, but it fills your positions of need, which is what your school needed. So I think it's July and everybody's looking for something to talk about because the season's so close.
Red period, whatever. So.
And I think, that's important to keep in mind. And they all look at things slightly different. They factor in camps, they factor in senior season, junior season, they factor in measurables. So one of the things they told us about Jamonta Waller, who On3 has as a 3-star and 24/7 Sports has him as a 5-star. And they said they felt like he was too short for the position. So they don't think he projects well as an NFL first-round draft pick because they think he's too short to be an edge long-term.
And who is they?
They is Chad Power. Some guys typing, behind their computers that never played college football, essentially.
Yeah. I understand. But I'm not putting them down, but we're taking them too literally,
Sure.
Napier has proven his ability to judge talent. Osiris wasn't a 5-star. Look what a good player he was, Torrance. And how, so let's talk about these 2 guys that Florida picked up and why it was so significant. I have an opinion. Number one, at this time in the dead period, the Fletcher Westphal pick made a big splash in more ways than one. And to get him at a time when, there were other teams like Clemson and in Arkansas, and I forget who else looking at him and breathing. Auburn breathing down his neck, and to bring him and get him there. And then when your interview came out, I looked at him and watched him and listened. I thought, this is the kind of guy you build around, because he's not going to go anywhere. He's not interested. His parents are going to move down here. He told you they like the taxes and the warm weather and whatever. So he's a lifer at Florida. He's a good student, and there's no reason why he wouldn't play at least 4 years. Well, 3 when he probably goes to the NFL. But he's a guy guys with his physical ability, his speed, and his footwork and his intelligence. That's a big deal. So that was a big get. Now we got Kendall Jackson.
Yep.
I thought that was a whine when I first heard it, but no, it's a person. And a homegrown guy. We talk about getting home. They don't get any more homegrown than this guy. He's a native of Gainesville, right? And so
he's Auburn Hill's nephew.
Yeah, Aubrey Hill. Yeah, the former wide receiver, now passed, unfortunately. Yes, and that's wonderful. So tell us. And by the way, when we talk about evaluations, we talk about how players fit.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way anybody at On Three or otherwise could know more about that than you, because you study the team, you know their needs, you know what they're looking for, you know what the coaches say, and therefore you're trustworthy. And we're going to get into that tonight in a minute, because there's a guy in Gainesville that really ticked me, Knoxville or Nashville, wherever he was in Tennessee, that really ticked me off. And it was heresy in terms of my belief in journalism. You had contact with him. We talked about him last time. He rips you off. You apparently had a conversation we're going to talk about in a second. So those things matter. And at a time where we need clarity and good judgment and accuracy on reports, we're getting some crap thrown at us in some of these podcasts. Anybody with a microphone can do a podcast, and some of these guys are just anybody. That's getting it off my chest. Now, tell us about why Kendall Jackson is so important, as was Fletcher Westphal.
Well, Fletcher Westphal, as you already pointed out, I mean, he is a massive offensive lineman. And I think, and Kendall Jackson is a huge defensive lineman. And these are the kind of pieces that Billy Napier wants to build this team around. If you look at Georgia, if you look at Alabama, they're winning in the trenches. And we know that that's the recipe for success, particularly within the SEC. Fletcher Westphal is 6'8.5" and 335 pounds, and he's 17 years old. I mean, that is massive. But if you look at the guys that Billy Napier has either recruited himself, brought in from the transfer portal, all of them are big. They are huge guys. He wants a massive offensive line. He is slowly building that. And you're right. Fletcher Westphal is the type of guy you build a program around. He is incredibly intelligent. He has incredible athleticism, footwork. He's got the right attitude. He's coming for the right reasons. When he talked multiple times about Florida being the everything school.
Yeah, you picked up on that. You said something to him about that too. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and he said that Clemson, he felt like was a good, could help him after college, and had a great alumni base and could get him a good degree. He said he felt like Arkansas, he could really get developed as a player. His parents didn't like the culture at Georgia, so that was what nixed them from the bunch. They just didn't love the feel there. But he said he felt like Florida was the combination of those two other of his finalists, that Florida has a lot that they bring to the table with their degree, with their alumni base, with the opportunities that will await him when he graduates from the University of Florida. But he also feels like he's going to get super developed with two offensive line coaches in Rob Sale and Darnell Stapleton. He thinks that those guys are going to be able to get him to the league as well. And I just was refreshing to hear a kid be just as concerned about life after football, his education, opportunities in the community, and things like that, as he was about playing football at the next level. Because let's be honest, like less than 3% of college kids will go on to play NFL football. And I think Fletcher Westphal will be one of those, just based on his size and skill right now. But the fact that he's concerned about life after that, I think is just a good sign for the culture that Billy is cultivating at UF. And then Kendall Jackson is a legacy. I think that that's huge. I think it's important to bring guys into the fold that understand the history of the program, that understand what it means to wear the jersey, represent the logo that comes on the front, not just the name that goes on the back. Kendall Jackson, 6'4", 250 pounds. He's a 4-star guy from Buchholz High School. So you can't lose Gainesville kids to other schools. Miami wanted him.
Right.
So this is a huge win. Billy has to keep homegrown kids home. He certainly has to keep legacies home. And that's what he did by getting a pickup from Kendall Jackson. So all in all, huge week for UF.
Yeah, and I think he mentioned to you that Westphal, that they had actually about 5 people helping on the offensive line.
Yes. Yeah. He talked a lot about the offensive line assistants, and that really made a huge impression with him. And a lot of schools only have one offensive line coach. We are kind of an anomaly with the 2 that we have, but we talked so much, whether it be about recruiting or otherwise, about the Billy Napier Army. And here's where it showed why it's such an advantage, because most people don't even realize that there's multiple other offensive line assistants that are helping, the 2 main guys or anything like that. But that made a difference in this recruitment.
Yeah, for sure. Ali Peek Wilbur is her podcast is heard regularly on YouTube. I don't know what. Can you give a schedule? You never know for sure. And you got a big one coming up next week.
Yeah.
I can't say who it is. It's a big one.
Not yet, but we'll talk about it when we can. But we try to do 4 to 5 videos a week. It honestly kind of depends on what's going on. I mean, this week we did the Fletcher Westfall. Yesterday we did On 3. Today we did Kendall Jackson. We've got a couple others that are coming up. Got some really neat interviews that are in the process of being lined up. And so it kind of depends. But 4 times a week in general is a good, pretty safe number for us, and it's a peek inside Gator football. So
you having a good time?
Yeah.
Okay. Stand by for 1 second while I do this quick read on our sponsor, Titan MRI. Titan MRI is worth the short drive to Gainesville. No insurance is no problem. You can pay with cash or card with same-day scheduling available. You can start feeling better today because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville location from Ocala, Marion County, and the villages. That's TitanMRI.com. Back with Ali Peek. This is twice I've had her. You haven't had time to do that. I've had you on twice this week myself, for crying out loud. Love having you on. Let's shift just the gears just a little bit. It's a little off topic, but I want to get your take on it. I've just watched this special on Jimmy Valvano called The Speech. Now, for those who don't know this, you were probably 2 years old when it happened. But 30 years ago, Valvano gave that never give up speech he gave in the ESPYs as they were starting. He was getting an award, Arthur Ashe Award, and he was really already had cancer. He could barely make it to the stage. His friend Dick Vitale took him up there. This piece is all about what went into this whole thing. It's a really good story. I mean, there are things like they had him programmed for 2 minutes, okay? And he wasn't going to shut it down. The red light was blinking. He says, you can blink all you want to. He says, I've got tumors all over my body. What do I care about some guy in the back saying 30 seconds or whatever? I'm going to keep talking. And he did. Everybody cheered him. And even the producer and the guy who was running ESPN that I knew said that made his speech. He looked at Kim right in the eye and said, I ain't stopping right now. I got things to say. And he gave one of the great speeches in history. And the ironic thing is, if you see this piece, a number of people who were there and saw him and cried with him as he talked about starting the V Foundation were wound up getting cancer themselves. And including the last one, Dick Vitale, who he just announced he's got a third bout of cancer in his vocal cords. And so they all told their stories. His own daughter got cancer. But the fire in that speech, never give up, was just unbelievable. And how he got the energy to get up there and give that speech is remarkable. So I knew about Jimmy Valvano. I covered him some. I was in Albuquerque when he won that big game, ran around the court and doing things. And wasn't particularly a fan. I'm going to be honest about it. But I tell you what, he won my heart, and he'll win you. If you have not seen this video or seen this ESPN special, the ESPYs are on now, and I believe Trinity Thomas is up for something too, as I recall.
2, I think.
2, yeah. But anyway, that particular show, prior to that, if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to watch it, because you talk about caring about humanity and about loving people. Jimmy V did that. It's magnificent.
Well, I definitely am going to be checking it out.
Yeah. And I know it's before your time when you were a young girl. You probably were just a child in your parents' arms. All right, let's talk a little more about credibility, of people. Now, there's this guy. Don't even tell me his name. I don't want to know it, okay? I wrote a column about this tonight in Gator Bait. I don't think it's posted yet. But this guy came out with a statement on a podcast that DJ Lagway was going to flip to Clemson. And among the sources he had were a Miami assistant coach. Give me a break. I'm going to get my information from a Miami assistant? Anyway, he went on and gave this absurd scenario. And he ripped you off some of your video and used it without permission. And when I had you on to talk about it, you said, I think you might have said it there, it's not going to happen because he's been recruiting the team out there. And shortly thereafter, what happened? Fletcher Westphal signed up, and he said, I'm in. What a fool this guy is, and it made me so angry. It happened to coincide. I'm getting on my soapbox now, Ali. I do this once in a while. That the New York Times announcing this week that it's killing a sports page, which I went up against the New York Times for 4 years. I know what it's like at the New York Daily News. And more sports pages are disappearing. Writers are disappearing. Journalists are hard to find. Legitimate, authentic people like you who do a terrific job on doing your homework and you build on relationships. Why else would Fletcher Westphal's parents call you to say he'll come on with you? Because you did it the right way, with class and dignity. You weren't pushy, and you're truthful. This Jack Wad up in Tennessee, Mr. Orangehead, I call him, it just makes my blood boil for that to happen. I'm thankful to have someone like my young guys, who I'm really proud of, Matt Quartararo being one, Kyle Curtis being another, you, of course, being our colleague, and what you're doing. I'm so grateful to have that. You're the torchbearer now, Ali. You got it, so don't drop it.
Well, that is a whole lot of pressure, and I will absolutely try. But, the guy in Knoxville, it honestly doesn't really bother me if he wants to pull part of the video from my channel. What bothers me is that he didn't give credit, and he will say like, oh, this Florida podcaster or this Florida girl or something, as opposed to, hey, this channel said this, and this is, our rebuttal to it or whatever. But since that video, he's made 2 more, but I went back and looked at his channel today to see how many videos he had used that incorporated my content, and there was 10 of them. So I did send him an email that was like, hey, listen, I don't mind if you do this. I understand it's part of your shtick, but if you could please make sure that you give credit to my channel in every video where you use my content, I would appreciate it. And he did write back and said that he would. So we'll see, if he does or not. But he has a video on there that he just recently released that's 11 minutes long. 8 minutes of that 11 minutes is my content. And that's just, crazy. And for those of you that
called plagiarism. That's what it's called.
It is. And, if for YouTube algorithms, you want a video to be at least 8 minutes long. That's what, that's where the commercial gets incorporated. That's where it generates more revenue. So that's what he's trying to do, is make sure his videos are over 8 minutes long, but he's only doing 3 minutes worth of work to make it, 11 minutes instead. And it does feel cheap, and it does feel kind of like shticky, I guess. And it's not the kind of thing I would ever watch.
It's unethical. It's unethical. It's unscrupulous and all that.
It is. And he cuts the clips to make it sound like you're saying something that you're not, or cuts out, important pieces of it. And the whole thing's kind of a joke. And I guess Tennessee fans eat it up because he's got thousands of followers and gets thousands of views. But the comments are horrible. I had to stop reading them because I was like, oh my gosh, all of this stuff is so mean. But it is what it is, essentially. But I do wish that he would credit the YouTube channel if he's going to use entire videos.
I would certainly think so. Yes, for sure. All right, we're expecting Scott Carter to join us in just a minute here. We'll pick up on some other things. All right, tell me what else is going on in it's football season for me right now. We're getting there. It's SEC Media Days and what have you. Some things that are changing. I've been talking about this a lot. You and I talked about it before. Such a massive change in college football in the past couple of years. And over the period of 4 years, if you take in next year, 2024, go backwards to 2020, it will be the most tumultuous 4 years in the history of college football. In fact, it'll probably be more tumultuous than all the previous years because of all the changes that are going on, the additional 12-team playoff, et cetera, the transfer portal, et cetera, et cetera. And you've seen a little bit of the old stuff. Tell me what you see ahead, how you feel about it. You're optimistic. Do you think the change is good? Do you think the market value will settle in on NIL? How do you feel about it?
So I am a college football traditionalist. So all of these changes do freak me out a little bit. In regards to NIL, I do think that the market is going to settle a little bit because I just don't think the payments that we're seeing in these programs are sustainable. These boosters are not going to be willing to continue to shell out the amount of money that they're shelling out with no return on investment. So I do think at some point it kind of levels out a little bit. And there's something between what we had, which is players who maybe couldn't pay all their bills or eat on the weekends because training table wasn't open,
Right.
to what we have now, which is like the Wild West. But there has to be some sort of middle ground. I do think we find it. I hope that we find it. And in terms of all the other changes, I also wasn't a fan of a 12-team playoff. I guess it's great for the SEC because I think then there's just like 6 SEC teams that get in. But I find it hard to believe that we really end up with any different of an outcome. When you look at even the BCS and then now the playoffs, I don't think that there's ever been any huge surprises in any of those. So I think we would have ended up with the same champion either way. We're just going to have a few more football games before we get there, which I guess is okay. And then conference realignment is another major thing that's going on.
Right now, especially,
I mean, next year, after this season, there is no more divisions in the SEC. There's 16 teams. It just becomes something different than what we're used to seeing. And my hope is that it's for the better. My hope is that we preserve some of these traditional rivalries that college football just won't be the same without. And we get to create new ones. And hopefully we see some of the teams that we don't see very often on a more regular basis. I mean, the fact that Florida Auburn only play essentially at this point, like it's something like every 14 years or something ridiculous is crazy. So I would love for games like that to happen on a more regular basis. I just also don't really want to give up some of these games that we know and love. I mean, is it really the third weekend in October if Tennessee and Alabama don't play that weekend every year?
Yeah.
Same thing with the cocktail party, Florida, Tennessee, games that just evoke all of those strong memories for us of college football. I would like for those to stay in place.
We got some new chemistry now with those Oklahoma and Texas coming in there. There's an awful lot of talk about Texas lately. And quite frankly, I'm a little jealous of the SEC space right now on the Feinbaum show and whatever. By the way, I texted Paul and said, have you retired, for crying out loud? He hadn't been on the air in about 2.5 weeks because of all the other stuff. He said, almost. I'll be back soon. But, I look, it's a little unmanageable with this 16-team deal, but I guess we'll figure it out. And it's not quite as intimate. Yeah. I'm not so sure they shouldn't have gone to like 3 divisions or something, but that's just me. Yeah. We'll see how it works out. I'm not so sure that we've seen the end of the change. There could still be more change coming,
Well, they talk a lot about the idea of super conferences. So I think that's something to be, kind of on the lookout down the horizon. And, with the SEC and getting rid of divisions and the way that they set it up, they really only have committed to like the 2024 and 2025 season, essentially. So we don't know what will happen after that. And I think some of it will be determined by what the playoff committee tells us is the factors that they're looking at for teams to get in. Because there's a decent chance we move to a 9-game SEC schedule. But if we're strictly looking at wins and losses, I don't know that benefits the SEC. So I think they're probably going to wait to see, okay, what are you looking at? How are you determining? Because are we really going to handicap ourselves by playing one more really tough game when some of these other conferences get to skate by because there's only, 2 or 3 good teams in the entire conference. So I think a lot of that's a waiting game. And a lot of that will be determined by, other things that happen moving forward.
We talked about this a little bit last week, and that's the redo on the swamp. Now, it's going to take a while. I mean, I'm not even being around when they do it, but the fact is that there's certain things that I like to see preserved, and I hope there's a secret sauce for doing that, because what we have there is something so special. You don't want to start screwing around with it, I mean, what makes the swamp? If I said to you, what makes the swamp? What would you say? What are the 3 or 4 elements that makes the swamp?
Well, I personally think sweating with 90,000 of your closest friends is part of what makes it the swamp. Right. But the noise, the intensity, and Florida Field is built essentially. I mean, the stadium's straight up and down, and that allows sound to just reverberate across the the field in a way that very few stadiums in the country do, and that is. Saturday night in the swamp, 8:30 at night. It's dark at that point. There's a crazy opponent on the field with us. There is nothing like that. That stadium is one of the loudest, most rocking places in the entire country. And another thing that I like is that college football is for everybody. So if we're looking at shrinking the swamp because we're concerned about giving boosters more space and more comfortability, but we're pricing out the young family that wants to take their kids to their first Gator game, I personally think that that's wrong.
That ship has sailed. There's no more place for a family in college football. Who can afford that kind of money to take their kids to a football game?
And that makes me sad because that's where we start, attracting our Gator boosters is when they're 5 years old and they catch a sweatband from. I have Jack Jackson's sweatband that I caught when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
And I have never gotten rid of it. It sits on a shelf with a bunch of Eric's, Gator memorabilia and things like that. And that's a core memory for me. And that's something that, helps solidify my fandom. And, I think about those experiences and wanting the next generation of kids to have that. And, that kid that catches that then grows up to be a huge fan of that team and maybe buys season tickets or becomes a booster or, something down the line. These programs are fed by tradition, but you have to allow the opportunity for those traditions to be created by the younger generations. And if you price all of them out, eventually all of those big boosters go away. And then what are you left with? I think preserving our history and allowing these traditions to continue to be passed down is a part of what makes college football so unique.
Well, you can have changes. We've seen one already with the addition of "Don't Back Down," which is a great tradition, and there will be changes. So let's do this. Let's do a quick commercial. Maybe we'll be joined. You have to go, or can you stay for a minute?
All right, I can stay.
Good. All right, we'll have Scott Carter in a second. Let's go hear about our friends at Meldon Law.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Is it Meldon Law? Let's see where we went here. We went someplace. Hold on a second. Well, I've done it again, buddy. Let me go back and find it. There's this. I know Allie's on there somewhere. And hang on a second. Get the wrong button. Allie, talking earlier about the stadium and what you'd like to see kept. You mentioned, we're going to get Scott Carter on here. What is the one or two? It's built in a hole. It's loud, as you said, sweating profusely with 90,000 of your friends. How do you maintain that and still do have the modern amenities that you need? We know they need bathrooms, they need runways, escalators, all the stuff they need. But also and still reduce it, because that's what they're going with. They're going to be reducing the seating. Your take on that, and we'll bring Scott in just a minute.
So, if I'm in charge, I'm reducing the seating as by as few seats as I can while still making it a little bit more comfortable. I understand that the seats are, this big and that there is a need for more boxes. I think you can add more luxury suites without taking away any of the capacity. Honestly, you could probably add to it in that way. There's an entire side of the stadium where you could add boxes, but I would be a fan of like 5,000 seats going away to make it more comfortable for everybody there. I'm not a fan of the idea of 15,000. That just seems like a lot. And I do think we need to ask ourselves, like, in 20 years, are we going to want more seats? Are we going to wish we hadn't done this? And then also look at the other top programs across the country. Michigan's not reducing size. Alabama's not reducing size. Georgia's not reducing size. So if those places aren't doing it, why are we considering doing it?
Well, yeah, that is certainly a big thing to consider. But it seems as though the intimacy can be gotten, and you can get certainly the exposure on television, and you make the revenue, because there are going to be a lot of skyboxes and some of that kind of. Now that means you'll price out the people in the market. let's bring a guy who knows a little about this and talk to him. That'll be our friend Scott Carter. Good evening there, Scott.
Hey, buddy. What's going on?
Good. Say hello to Alex. She's with us again tonight.
Hey, Alex, how are you doing?
Hey, Scott. How are you?
Good, good.
Can we just jump in on the stadium thing and tell us what you know? Because we don't really know a lot about it. People ask me, well, who's on the board? Who's going to help decide it? I don't think that's been decided yet. But, Gator fans are anxious. Scott Carter, tell us what you know about the stadium changes.
Well, I mean, this is something that has been talked about, for about 4 years now. Mm-hmm. I know the UA has done several internal studies. Mm-hmm. And, you've heard everything in the rumor mill from a totally new stadium, maybe down where the golf course is, to, refurbishing the swamp as we know it. And I think that's where it's going to head. I would hate to see, the stadium actually move. I think where it is on campus is such an integral part of what makes it, what it is. But yeah, there's going to be some changes. I mean, I don't know. I still know they're studying this, buddy. I think now they're waiting for an architecture to give them some really strong ideas of what this might look like, So it's still a very fluid kind of process right now. I do think that, there will be obviously changes. Some will, I'm sure, go over well, some won't. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast when you deal with these things. But I kind of heard what you guys were talking about when I logged on here. And I kind of agree with you guys. I mean, I hate to see the character of the place change drastically because I think that, I've covered sports for 25 years now. Major League Baseball, college football, National Hockey League. The swamp, when it's humming, it's the only place that really compares in noise-wise is LSU. I've never heard a crowd get any louder than in the LSU in the swamp, and that counts playoffs, World Series. It's a special place. So how do you kind of keep that? And you're going to talk about, reducing seats. I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. I don't think Scott Strickland or anybody else does right now. What I think the where they are now is they've, put this bid in for architects who do this stuff for a living and work with what they have. And, some of the important things they want to keep, obviously, is that home field advantage, that noise. So that's going to be important. But I know from a lot of surveys they've done with fans, season ticket holders, I mean, people do want, I think, a more comfortable experience. But, you can't have it all, right, guys? So it's going to be just where they land is going to be something we'll all be watching closely. But my main thing, as I said, I just hope the character of the place remains the same.
Well, Ali and I are going on the record right now saying we don't want to move those stinking stadium, okay? We don't want that move because that will destroy the magic that's in the swamp. I don't know, Ali, you speak for yourself, but I think that'd be a bad mistake.
I have zero interest in moving the swamp. And Buddy and I talked about this last week. And I know, Scott, you are obviously more than aware of this, but that there are some structural things that have to be fixed, comfort aside, surveys aside. And so I know that this has to happen, but I do think they have to be so careful about it. And I am of the mindset that I really hope that there is a committee of people put together who are so invested in the university that we can 100% trust the decisions that they make. And I'm not saying I don't trust Scott Strickland, but I don't think of Scott Strickland as a lifelong Gator. I know he's the athletic director, and so he will get, major say or final say or whatever on decisions. But I hope that there are people like Steve Spurrier, that there are, donors that have donated to this university for 50 years that are involved, that there maybe are former players, but just people whose blood, sweat, and tears really are on that field, that kind of have a say in how this goes too. Because truly, Scott Strickland may not even be the athletic director by the time the project is done. And I'm not saying he's getting fired or anything like that, but this is a job to him. But there are lots of people that this is their life. And so I would love if they got to weigh in as well.
Yeah. Well, you're talking to a four-time legacy Gator there, including her grandfather, Scotty Peek, and all the way through. And was it 5 people? Your husband, of course, played there, and her brother played there. I think her second cousins all played there. I don't know. There's a bunch of peaks in there someplace. We're not
Yeah,
even counting that other branch of peaks like Gene and all those guys. That's a different branch. So, yeah. So,
well, I mean, I'm with her on that. I mean, you want, like I said, I hope that those voices are heard and counted, and that in the end, it's a better place. I just know a lot of the stuff that, like, just immediate stuff that I've heard about is, like the east side of the concourse over where Yon Hall is. I mean, that really hasn't been touched since I was a kid. I mean, it looks the same as my first game in the mid '80s. And I remember in about 2012, they did the West Concourse, and it made it a lot nicer. And I thought it was a nice change, and it really didn't impact the stadium, the feel of it, but it certainly was nicer. So, but yeah, we'll see where it lands. I still think it's early to really know any true definitives, but you've got to have people in there, like Alex said, who really know the place and care about the place, and that's important.
Yeah. And Scott, will you come on from time to time and update us, because we have no information from anybody? At least you have something. We're all guessing at this, and we don't know much other than, So
yeah, I mean, it's really just been mostly at this point, buddy, a lot of internal chatter. And even internally, I mean, it's kind of been close to the vest in terms of the upper administration. When they put out the architecture bid, that was the big first step, really. There's certainly nowhere near, I don't think, landing on who that's going to be. It's only been out for a week. But now people are talking about it, and I think more people are. I mean, there's a lot of people who, the casual fans probably weren't even that aware that there was talk going on about this. So it's good to get it out.
Caught me by surprise. I didn't know what was going on either.
Yeah, it's good to get these discussions going, and hopefully the people who will make the final calls will listen and take it all into account. So,
all right, Scott, quickly, let's talk a little baseball here, and then we got Matt Quartararo standing by to talk about recruiting, which you don't get into that much. Talk about Colby Halter now. It looks like he's signed with the Athletics. He'll be leaving. And the final toll, you were in Omaha and all that. What does the uptick look like for the Florida baseball program in Sully?
Well, I think they're still going to be fine. I don't think anything that's happened in the draft was any surprise. I mean, the one that kind of caught them off guard probably was the transfer from UCLA to pitcher Kelly Austin. He signed with the Astros as undrafted free agent. He was looked at as a guy who would fill one of the roles next year from Sproat and Waldrop. So now they'll go back into the portal and try to land something there. I think they did better than normal in some of their high school kids they signed who either didn't get drafted or drafted lower than expected and will probably end up on campus. But one thing, I never, with Sully and his track record, I don't worry about them finding pitching too much. That's his specialty. People want to pitch for him, so they'll find another arm to replace Austin there. But yeah, I mean, the big story was just, it was obviously good to see Wyatt Langford go where he did. There was a buzz, the morning of the draft that he might even go number one.
Right.
Ended up going number 4, quite frankly. If I'm him, I'm pretty happy going number 4 over number 3 because the money's not that much different. He landed with.
He can live with $8 million, can he? I mean, he'd be all right, right?
What's that? Yeah.
He can live with $8 million, I think, or 7. Yeah. Good stuff from Scott Carter. As always, you can read him on FloridaGators.com. Does a great job. Scott, thank you very much for being on the show. We'll talk to you again soon. We'll update you on Alex and my plans for the new Florida field, Seas Prairie, okay? We'll keep you in the loop, right? Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. All right, let's go right over back to the Orange and Blue Room, Allie. And I don't know if you've met this young gentleman or not, but he's someone who's done stellar work lately for Gator Bait, Matt Quartararo, and he was up and running with the story today on the kid from Gainesville, the wine man, Kendall Jackson, and had it up on not quite as quick as you did, or he may have. Anyway, say hi to one of the bright young people up and coming in our business, Matt Quartararo. Say hi to Allie.
Hey, Matt.
How are you guys? Hi, Allie. How, buddy? How we doing?
Hi. I know you know Allie's work. She's done some really great stuff in terms of recruiting and otherwise. And update. You give us your take, and we talk. Ali and I have been talking about it. Two big gets, as we said. Certainly, Westfall being one, which is a game changer kind of thing. And now today, you had the homegrown guy, the ultimate homegrown guy, Kendall Jackson, the 6'3", 203. What's his size?
240.
240. Yeah, 250. Talk about what you learned there, Matt, and how you think recruiting is going right now. Seems to be on a hot streak for Billy right now.
Well, it's definitely been a hot streak, and that's been going on for, the last month and a half, and it's great to see that that's continued to go. Obviously, both are great additions to the 2024 class. I think the best thing that I've seen so far is that recruits and players alike are both, saying that it's still not over, which I think is a really positive sign, because a lot of people were, calling towards the end of June to start to see some progress, and then we had that big week, and everything kind of seemed rolling. And then later this month we'll have the Grill in the Ville, which I think is an exciting event, and a lot of recruits will be back in Gainesville for that. I think that getting Jackson, I think that's the biggest one, because Billy Napier, when he got hired, really had a big focus on getting recruits from Florida, getting them to stay in state, but I think also just the local talent. As Ali, I know that you touched on before, getting kids that are from Gainesville, there's no reason that they should want to go elsewhere. So I think that getting him to stay from Buchholz, I think that that's a great sign for Napier and the rest of the staff.
Yeah, real quick, I just talking about, had a thread earlier today, I couldn't resist it, saying, what's your earliest recollection of Florida, Tennessee? People were saying, well, my game was 2017, whatever. And I wrote down 1955 when they came they were already in the swamp. They came with the Johnny Majors. There was a fullback there named Tommy Brunson from Gainesville. Okay, they came in there, and they were a number one team. That where Tennessee was. They took Tommy Bronson right out of here, and he went on to become a terrific player. And I believe became student body president at Tennessee. You can't let your homegrowns get away, Matt and Ali.
That's absolutely true. My earliest Tennessee memory, it's always my birthday weekend. My birthday is September 17th. So it's always that weekend. And I was in about first grade, and my dad took a sheet and wrote, Tennessee, 10,000 or 100,000 fans, 10,000 teeth, and let me hold it up on top of our car, which, at this point, DCF would probably get called, this day and age or something. But that is.
I got to have a picture of that. You got one? I got to have that picture. Put it on the show, right?
I'll see if I can dig it up.
Yeah.
But that, that was the kind of parenting, the 80s parenting going on in my household.
Yeah. Good.
But you're right. Homegrown talent. You've got to keep kids here.
Yeah, so let's talk about the rankings of the stars. Ali had some conversation, but she did some research on this. I learned some things. I didn't know basically it's set up for the NFL. That's why they're 32 5-stars, because it's really an NFL ranking. Ali, you explained that to me a while ago. Matt, did you know all about that?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the whole ranking thing. I think that fans often, look at that kind of as the Bible of recruiting. And I know Ali touched on it earlier as well. I mean, it's just kind of a guideline, and people don't necessarily know how it works. So a lot of people are overreacting to, where the Gators ended up. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is how that translates onto the field, which, On 3 and 24/7 and all of them don't necessarily know. So I think it's good to have. It's a little bit of a standard as to, where these players sit amongst each other. But at the end of the day, it matters come August and September, once these players are, joining the teams and hitting the field on Saturdays. That's really the only thing that matters. I think that people kind of overreact a little bit to it. They want that top class, which I think is still good to get. But I mean, it's not the end of the day if things are slipping down a little bit.
Ali, talk about what you learned talking to those guys who rank Give the Stars.
Well, recruiting is subjective, and it's subjective, between agencies that do it as well. And they all take a little bit different approach to it. Charles Powers told me that, when we talked about Jamonta Waller, he mentioned that he's only 6'1.5", and he feels like that's too short for an edge. And so therefore he'll be a good player, but it doesn't translate to a first round pick. And I can understand that logic. I also know that some of the other sites have him, what they say is verified at almost 2 inches taller. So, they're human, all of these people that do that. I do think inherent biases get baked into all of this. But I do think that a lack of understanding of how these ranking systems work kind of causes some of the anger sometimes too. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. The development that you're getting in your own program matters. And I mean, obviously you want a guy that's a top 4 or 5 star as opposed to a guy that's a 3 star, barely making the list there. You do want as good a talent as you can get. I just don't think that there's as big a gap as maybe these ranking systems would allow you to believe. I think a lot of it is development. And I think that Billy Napier develops talent. I think we saw that last year. I think we've seen that with Torrance. I think you see that when you look at Montrell Johnson, when you, look at Trevor Etienne, I just think that there's a lot of really good development going on at UF. So great. We got a 4 star instead of a 5 star. I think his odds of making it in the NFL are going to be pretty high if he comes through Florida because the talent is getting developed here.
That's proven to be right. Let's talk about a guy who was not getting much notice. I don't know what he was when he came out of school. I heard someone try to convince us on the other day on one of these stupid tweets that Graham Mertz that Mertz was a walk-on. Do you remember that, Ali? So he was a walk-on. He was no walk-on. He was a highly sought guy. He went down to Tuscaloosa with Nick and hung out there. They wanted to sign him. So I don't think Mertz is going to come in and be an All-American, but I just looked at the 247 rankings of the quarterbacks in the SEC, starting quarterbacks, and he's 14th. Well, that's going to be a bulletin board in my house, reminding him he's the 14th best quarterback, Matt, in the SEC. So I sent you a story today, Matt. I wish I remember who wrote it. I don't like to quote stories without giving them credit. But apparently in Wisconsin, in the shotgun, he really did much better. He had time to read defense, and he stepped into the throws, and he played really better without the threat of pressure in his face. So the stats said measurable for 2021 and 22, he completed 65.6% of his 119 play action passes attempts for 1,227 yards and 10.3 yards per attempt for 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. That according to Pro Football Focus. Where do you think Billy's going to go with this? I think we know it, Matt, exactly what he's going to do with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are getting a little bit frustrated with the fact that, number one, he came from outside the SEC, which, people will point to the SEC being the best conference in football. So I think there's a little bit of a chip on their shoulder when it comes to that. But also people, we just had Anthony Richardson, and you could go another 10, 15 years in college football and not see another player quite with that talent. So I think that people are a little, on edge about not having somebody like Richardson in the backfield. But I think that Mertz is going to come in, and you touched on it. I mean, he's going to complete the passes, especially if he has the time, which looking at the line, he should. So I think that Napier is going to develop a system around him that benefits the way that he plays football, which is, stepping back in the pocket, having the time and delivering the ball accurately and on time, which for any given football team, let alone Florida, should be a recipe for success. So I think that, Mertz will have the talent around him. As long as Napier puts the correct system around him, which I think that Napier is more than capable of doing, then I think that Mertz will be able to flourish, which a lot of people are not expecting.
Maddie, what do we see here? Offensive linemen, big guys. We see ball control. We see a clock now that keeps running. The time is shortened. It favors the running game. You can kill the clock more. You can grind up time more often. You get a quarterback who can run a little bit enough that he has play action from the shotgun. It is no mystery, Ali, what they're going to do with this guy.
I think what everybody is comparing him to Richardson or wanting the same type of skill set or things like that is silly, and it's not the type of quarterback that Mertz is. But Florida doesn't need Graham Mertz to be Anthony Richardson. They don't need him to win games. They need him not to lose games. They have probably the best running back duo in the SEC in Johnson and Etienne. They're going to have some really good wide receiver targets that are really young and hungry. And then obviously in addition to Ricky Pearsall, and they're going to have an improved and more deep offensive line, which Florida's offensive line was great last year. So that's, really saying something. I think that he will make those short and intermediate passes. I think they'll lead on the athleticism of their wide receivers. And first and foremost, are amazing running backs. So I think people are freaking out for no reason. I think that we don't need him to be great. We need him to not make terrible mistakes. We don't need him to win games. We just need him to not lose games. And I think that he's capable of that. And we're talking about somebody who has started for 3 seasons. He was the most experienced guy in the transfer portal. He was a top recruit in 2019. So it's not like that talent went away. I think Wisconsin was incredibly inconsistent on offense and really put him kind of in a system that didn't really fit his skill set. It really honestly wasn't until their head coach was fired that they started kind of being able to use his talent and kind of build the offense around him. So I think that people are kind of freaking out for maybe no reason. I think maybe we have other question marks that we should be more concerned about. We just need Graham Mertz to take care of the football and let our stars do their thing.
And here's a novel concept: get off the field on 3rd down. Wow, wouldn't that be unusual? Austin Armstrong, if he does that, now this whole thing changes. The dynamics of that whole thing changes. Real quick, I'll ask you both. I've asked this question the last couple of days to people. Are you more optimistic now than you were, say, a month ago? And if so, why? Matt?
I don't think that too much about this season in terms of optimism has changed.
The future, yeah.
But I mean, it's hard not to be more optimistic now looking towards, next year and the year after that. The 2024 class, it's shaping up to be one of the better recruiting classes that we've seen here at Florida for a very long time. And I think that Napier and his staff are still working on that. So I think that at least where you would expect us to be in heading into year 2 of a new head coach, I think that the program is exactly where you want it to be. And when you look at Florida's recruiting class against, teams that have been perennial powerhouses for the last couple of years, Florida's right up in the mix. So I think that's exactly where you want to be.
Matt and Ali, some people I know have gone from saying they're going to take 6 wins. Now, some of them are saying up to 8. Ali, how are you feeling about that right now? I know a lot of these kids don't come till 2024, but the momentum they get, and they get some solid play, get their new defense, can they win 8, Ali?
I think 7 to 8, it would be a really great season for Florida. I think that there are winnable games on the schedule. I think you just got to win the coin flips, or at least some of the coin flips to get those 7 or 8 wins. But I think that it's possible. I do. And I think that the program is in general heading in a great direction. Billy Napier's crushing it on the recruiting trail. When you think about Florida State finishing with a 10-win season, and they are not having nearly the recruiting success that Florida is having at this moment. And, we're being mentioned with Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama when we won 6 games last year. So that really bodes well for when we start to win 8 and win 10 and whatever. And this class is being put together with the understanding that they're being brought in to help change the culture and to build things the right way. So I don't think we lose any of them regardless of what happens on the field this season, which is also another really important key to this entire puzzle. Because if you get this class to commit now in July, but they're out the door in November, then none of it mattered anyway, right? But I don't think that's going to happen with this class. So in general, I'm positive, and I think 7 or 8 wins fans should be happy with.
Good stuff, Matt Quartararo. Good stuff from you. And Ali, always great being on with you. Keep up the good stuff. I know you got a big one next week. I can't say it. I'm dying to see this next interview. Line them up and knock them down, Ali Peek Wilbur. Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Talk to you soon.
Of course. You guys take care. Have a good one.
All right, folks. Thank you very much to these bright young people. They're our future right here. We're glad of that. I'm going to play this for you and for my friend Steve Spurrier. It's important to know there's a special occasion coming up at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and here's Steve to talk about it. We'll have him on later, but here he is with his private recordings about what's happening on August 14th.
Hi there, this is head ball coach Steve Spurrier, and I'm here with my wife Jerry and our good friend Sherry Houston, the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of North Central Florida. We're thrilled to announce that the 2-year anniversary of our restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, is coming up on August 14th. Last year we had so much fun celebrating with everybody that we're doing it bigger and better this year. We're hosting a special dinner and celebration that will include a chef's choice of premium buffet or your favorite Spurrier Gridiron Grill menu, including a filet mignon carving station, shrimp and grits, short rib risotto, wonderful seafood options, and many dessert options also.
Like my famous chocolate chip cookies.
Proceeds being donated to the local Ronald McDonald House.
Thrilled to once again partner with Coach Jerry and the Spurrier Gridiron team to raise funds for the Ronald McDonald House, benefiting families and children experiencing medical emergencies.
Spurrier's Gridiron Grill will be donating 11% of all of our money from food and 66% of drink sales to the Ronald McDonald House.
Go to Spurriers.com right now and reserve a ticket before they sell out.
We'll have wonderful food, special guests, and a limited edition of the second year anniversary collector's coins, as well as prizes like a dinner with me and Jerry. We couldn't have become one of the busiest and most successful restaurants in the Southeast without your support. So we want to celebrate with the most important people of our team, and that's you.
I want to celebrate with some of those cookies. Do you have any of those?
Sure do. Right here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks to HBC and friends. I want to be sure and tell you about our friends at Red Star before we get off of here, because they're so important to our success here on the show. They've been loyal sponsors and friends for like 7 years now. So they're just like pure gold to us. I want to thank them personally for participating. It's the folks at Red Star Medical Research here in Ocala. They're known for their high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility downtown. Cutting-edge clinical research being done down there with things like Alzheimer's and also psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia. All these things are being done with the idea toward giving us an improved treatment for health. And that's why they want you to be a part of these if you can. Go online at redstar.net and find out more about them and how you get qualified if you do. In some cases, you get compensation for time and travel, and they, of course, want you to participate in these programs. This research goes to prominent pharmaceutical companies, biomedical companies throughout the medical industry. Go to redstar.net and find out more about it. Red Star Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. I want to thank Ali Peek Wilbur and our friend Scott Carter, Matt Quartararo, and all of you for being on the show tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night. We got Orange Blue Blood Thursdays coming up with Pastor Ben Droop and the others. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching.